Deep in the mountains, in a small thatched cottage, lived a young girl named Kongji. Her eyes were as clear as spring water, and her heart was as warm as the sunlight on a spring day. But sadly, Kongji lost her mother when she was very young. Soon after, her father remarried, and Kongji began living with her new stepmother. Unfortunately, the stepmother was a very cruel woman. Before the sun even rose, she would wake Kongji and order her to fetch water, cook meals, do the laundry, and clean the house. Whenever Kongji tried to rest, the stepmother would shout angrily, "Stop dawdling and get back to work." The stepmother also had a daughter named Patji. She wasn't only unpleasant to look at but also had a twisted, mean personality. Patji often bullied poor Kongji. When Kongji was washing clothes, Patji would sneak up and throw the clean ones into the muddy water. And whenever Kongji tried to eat, Patji would snatch her bowl away. "Make my meal. Wash my feet. My hands are cold." And so, Kongji's difficult days went on and on. One morning, the stepmother called Kongji and Patji out to the yard. She looked back and forth between the two girls and said, "Go weed the fields beyond that hill." But the stepmother gave Kongji a rocky, stony field, while Patji got a soft, sandy one. And to make things worse, she handed Kongji a fragile wooden hoe that looked as if it might break at any moment, while giving Patji a strong iron hoe. With heavy steps, Kongji walked toward the rocky field. Under the blazing sun, she started digging into the hard ground with her weak wooden hoe. Sweat rolled down her back. Then, with a sharp crack, the hoe struck a big rock and snapped in two. Kongji stared at the broken pieces in despair. She hadn't even finished half the field. What was she to do now? The thought of her stepmother's angry face filled her with fear. Tears welled up and began to fall down her cheeks. Just then, she heard a gentle lowing sound nearby moo. When she looked up, a black ox was walking slowly toward her. "Don't cry, Kongji. I'll help you." The black ox began to move powerfully across the field, plowing and weeding as it went. Before long, the once rocky field was perfectly neat and clean. When the stepmother came later that evening, her eyes widened in shock. How could that rough field be finished already? She was furious, but there was nothing she could complain about. So she raised her voice harshly and said, "If you're done with your work, go help your sister instead of standing around doing nothing." One bright spring day, news spread through the village that a big celebration would be held at a relative's house. From early morning, the stepmother and Patji busied themselves getting ready. They put on their finest silk dresses and pinned shiny hair ornaments into their neatly combed hair. In front of the mirror, they turned this way and that, admiring their own reflections with satisfied smiles. Kongji, too, longed to go to the festival, but the stepmother coldly shook her head. "How dare you think of going to a festival? Fill the water jars in the yard to the top, pound 10 sacks of rice, and weave 10 rolls of cloth, only then may you come." Leaving behind a mountain of chores, the stepmother took Patji and left for the feast. With a sigh, Kongji walked toward the well. Balancing heavy buckets of water, she went back and forth again and again, pouring water into the large jar. But something was strange. No matter how much she poured, the jar never filled up. When she looked closer, she saw a large hole in the bottom. All the water she fetched was leaking right out again. Kongji's legs gave way, and she sank to the ground in exhaustion. No matter how hard she worked, she could never finish all the tasks, and she still had to pound the rice and weave the cloth. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "How will I ever finish this? I guess I'll never get to go to the festival." Kongji crouched beside the jar, crying quietly as the cold spring breeze brushed against her tear-stained cheeks. From far away, she could faintly hear the sound of drums echoing from the village. The festival had already begun. As Kongji sat in front of the jar, crying for a long time, a soft hopping sound came from somewhere nearby. Before she knew it, a toad had bounced up to her side. Looking up at her kindly, the toad spoke in a gentle voice. "Don't cry, Kongji. I'll help you." Then the toad pressed its broad, flat back tightly against the hole at the bottom of the jar. And, as if by magic, the water began to stay inside without leaking out. Kongji hurriedly fetched more water, again and again. And at last the jar was filled to the brim, shimmering in the sunlight. "Thank you so much, Mr. Toad." Next, Kongji began to pound the rice. Thump, 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 thump. She worked with all her strength, but the pile of rice was as high as a mountain and never seemed to grow smaller. The sun was sinking lower in the sky, and the work still seemed endless. Weary and discouraged, Kongji sat down with a sigh. "How will I ever finish all of this?" Just then, she heard a fluttering sound above her. Flap, flap, flap. Looking up, she saw a flock of sparrows flying down into the yard. They landed around her, chirping cheerfully. "Don't be sad, Kongji. We'll help you." The sparrows began pecking busily at the grains with their tiny beaks. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The lively rhythm of their work filled the air. In no time at all, 10 sacks of rice were perfectly milled and clean. "Thank you so much, little sparrows." Now, Kongji sat down at the loom to weave the cloth. She worked hard, her hands moving quickly, but it looked as though it would take all night to finish. Though she felt anxious, she didn't stop. Then, a gentle light appeared in the sky. A beautiful fairy was descending slowly on a soft white cloud. With a warm smile, she approached Kongji and said, "Kongji, let me finish the weaving for you. Put on these clothes and go to the festival." The fairy handed her a set of silken robes and a pair of shimmering flower shoes. When Kongji changed into the dress and slipped on the shoes, her reflection in the mirror glowed softly. She looked as graceful and radiant as a fairy herself. Kongji stepped out of the house, the soft rustle of her silk dress following her every graceful move. The evening sky was painted in shades of crimson by the setting sun, and from the edge of the village came the faint sound of cheerful festival music. Kongji's heart fluttered with excitement and a touch of nervousness. Along the road to the village, a small stream flowed gently under a stepping stone bridge. As Kongji carefully crossed the stones, a loud voice suddenly echoed all around. "Make way. The governor is passing through." Startled, Kongji tried to step aside quickly, but in her haste, her foot slipped. One of her sparkling flower shoes slipped off and fell into the stream with a soft plop. "Oh no, what should I do?" But there was no time to stop. With only one shoe on, Kongji hurried toward the festival house, her heart racing. Meanwhile, the governor, riding his horse, happened to see Kongji crossing the bridge. Bathed in the golden glow of the sunset, she looked so radiant that he could not take his eyes off her. He watched in awe as she disappeared into the distance, her silk dress shimmering like a dream. When he finally came to his senses, he noticed a small flower shoe floating on the stream below. "Find the owner of this shoe at once." The governor's men quickly retrieved the shoe and set out to search for its owner. At the same time, Kongji had arrived at the festival. When her stepmother saw her, she snapped in an irritated voice, demanding answers. Whether she had really filled the water jars, finished pounding all the rice, or woven the cloth. And where on earth did she get such fine clothes? The stepmother's eyes burned with jealousy. Fearing that others might notice Kongji's beauty, she snatched away the silk dress, and forced her stepdaughter into the kitchen corner, far from everyone's eyes. As the festival reached its liveliest moment, a deep, commanding voice suddenly rang out from beyond the gate. "We have come to find the owner of this flower shoe." The governor's guards entered the courtyard, holding up a single sparkling flower shoe. When word spread that the governor would marry whoever fit the shoe, the whole house erupted in excitement. All the young women in the village rushed forward, eager to try it on first. "That's my shoe." "No, it's mine," each one shouted, claiming it as her own. But strangely, no matter who tried, the shoe fit no one. Some had feet too small, others too wide. The delicate shoe refused them all. Then, pushing through the crowd, Patji came running out in her socks, yelling, "Move aside. That's my shoe." She grabbed the shoe and tried to jam her foot into it, grunting and struggling. But her foot was far too big. Her heel stuck out awkwardly. Her mother, the stepmother, hurried over and tried to shove the shoe on by force. "It must be my daughter's shoe." But Patji couldn't bear the pain. She let out a scream and fell backward, sending the flower shoe rolling across the courtyard with a clatter. Just then, one of the guards noticed a quiet girl crouched in the corner of the kitchen. It was Kongji. Though she wore plain, worn-out clothes, her gentle beauty stood out among everyone there. "Young lady," the guard said softly, "would you try the shoe on?" The stepmother's face turned pale as she frantically waved her hands. "No. Not her. It won't fit her." But the guard ignored her and walked straight toward Kongji. Patji tried to block him, but he firmly pushed both of them aside. With respect, he knelt and presented the flower shoe to Kongji. Kongji carefully slipped her foot into the shoe, and to everyone's amazement, it fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. Then, from the folds of her dress, Kongji quietly pulled out the other shoe, the matching pair to the one in the guard's hand. The stepmother and Patji froze in disbelief, their mouths hanging open. All they could do was stomp their feet in frustration, as the truth shone clear before everyone's eyes. "So it was you all along." The governor had finally found the beautiful young woman he had seen on the stepping stone bridge. He was deeply moved by Kongji's bright, gentle eyes and her kind heart. At last, Kongji dressed in a lovely silk hanbok, and became the governor's beloved wife. The two of them lived together in great happiness. Meanwhile, the stepmother and Patji were punished for all the wrongs they had done. But kind-hearted Kongji knelt before the governor and pleaded softly, "Please, forgive them just this once." The governor, touched by her warm and forgiving heart, decided to pardon them. Ashamed of what they had done, the stepmother and Patji finally realized their mistakes. From then on, they changed their ways and lived kindly and humbly. And so, gentle and good-hearted Kongji found true happiness, and everyone lived peacefully ever after. Kindness always brings happiness, just like Kongji's heart did.